I was just looking out the window and thinking to myself, like, wow, it's August 1st. We're pretty much down to 5 months in the year 2023. The weather today here in Pennsylvania, in eastern Pennsylvania, it's quite nice. There's a nice cool breeze coming in through this window, which I do find refreshing given all the heat that we've had. Not that I'm one to complain about the weather because, you just got to take every day as it comes, right? But yeah, we're pretty well into the second half of 2023, and I sense that there's a whiff of autumn in the air. I know we still have one full month of summer, so to speak. I guess depending how you look at it, more than just a month, right? Because September 21st is, I believe, officially when autumn, would typically begin. I forget if it's from a climatological perspective or meteorological perspective that September 1st is oftentimes viewed as the beginning of the new season, or like in the case of winter, say December 1st, or March 1st in the case of spring, or June 1st in the case of summer. But regardless of how you choose to look at the calendar, I hope you're having a great day. And I apologize ahead of time for kind of getting off into a bit of a tangent there about the weather and about the calendar and about the days of the year. But, as it relates to Stronghold Digital Mining, we have 5 months here to really, I think, start to live even more fully into our full potential. When we look at Q2 2023, okay, so that's the quarter that ended back on June 30th. And it's the quarter whose results we're going to be discussing next Thursday, August 10th. There were two main events that took place during Q2 2023. The first, if I'm not mistaken, was announced on April 21st. And that was essentially the MicroBT WhatsMiner M50 purchase. I believe we purchased about 5,000 of those machines with a slated delivery date, if I'm not mistaken, sometime in late May. Then, okay, so that was April 21st. So then May 4th, 2023. And by the way, I'm doing this based on memory, so if I'm off a day or two, cut me a little bit of slack. But on May 4th, if I'm not mistaken, that's when we announced our deal with Canaan. This is the first deal with Canaan, which was exclusively a win-win hosting plus agreement, right? Where basically on May 4th, we announced that as of May 15th, we'd have about 2,000 Bitcoin mining machines installed, right, at Panther Creek, if I'm not mistaken. And then the second set of 2,000 Bitcoin mining machines would be installed on, I believe it was June 15th of 2023. So those were the two major Bitcoin mining machine acquisitions, so to speak, that I can think of off the top of my head that occurred during Q2 2023. So that would have effectively brought us up to about 3.6 exahash as of, say, June 15th of this year. So then the question becomes, when we look at our performance in Q1 2023, and then we extrapolate forward, okay, well, what really changed, right, between Q1 and Q2? We did see a rise in the price of Bitcoin, like Bitcoin mining economics improved, I'd say substantially compared to where we were at the very beginning of Q1 2023. The majority of our internal hash rate, right, that we announced on April 21st and then again on May 4th, would really have only come online, say, starting on May 15th, basically through, the rest of the month of May in through June. So it's going to be interesting to see, right, like to what extent that impact, of having that extra hash rate, like what impact that had on Q2 results. Now, the other number that I think is kind of important is our so-called FOG number, right? FOG, Fuel Operations and Maintenance and General Administrative. Okay, what I'm kind of like, assigning the acronym of FOG. We were at roughly $24 million, total, right, for those three categories during Q1 2023. So was there an opportunity to compress some of those core expenses during Q2 2023? And I think to the extent we were able to compress some of those expenses, it's plausible, okay? It's plausible that we might have potentially come in like somewhat cash flow positive for Q2 2023. Now, I'm smiling because this is a topic that amongst different co-owners, right, there's, I think, a little bit of a different view as to how, what kind of result we might have. I'm not yet ready to make any formal prediction. I'm simply observing that to the extent we were able to compress, our FOG, right, metrics, right, fuel, operations and maintenance, general administrative, if we were able to compress that a bit during Q2 2023, in addition to, right, the additional hash rate that was brought online, sort of like middle of May, end of May, in through June, that combination could potentially result in our having a positive adjusted EBITDA. But I'm not ready to discuss in detail what I think may or may not have happened. I'm just observing, right? It's very difficult to have insight as to what's going on from an expense perspective. A lot of our revenue inputs, we can look at that and figure out what's going on fairly easily. And we're going to be pulling up our slide for today in just a moment. But it's a little bit more opaque, right, when we look at expenses to really understand, hey, what's actually going on. There's only so much that one can discern from a distance, right? I'm not there to, be at a meeting where it's like, hey, we had a piece of data center equipment break, and the good news is we're getting it replaced, but it's going to cost us, X amount of dollars. I mean, obviously I'm not there to, nor would it be appropriate for me to be there, right, to assimilate that data into any sort of, model or projection as to, what our expenses might have been. I'm simply pointing out, though, that, I think if our expenses were similar to Q1 2023, then, we're going to have a little bit of a challenge to sort of get above that positive adjusted EBITDA number. And that's not a bad thing. Okay. It's not a bad thing at all. I think it's just, the truth is, we're doing really, really well. I'm just saying, though, in the context of having, slowly emerged from the depths of a really brutal, crypto winter, I'm just saying, I think we need to temper our expectations, right? And not just think, hey, you know what? We were left for dead, right? In Q1 2023, suddenly in Q2, we're, off to the races with double digit, positive adjusted EBITDA. Okay, I think that's getting ahead of ourselves. But I think there is an opportunity, right, for there to be a much closer call as it relates to adjusted EBITDA for Q2 2023. More to come on that. Okay, let's take a look at our first slide, please. Okay, so August 1st, 2023, these are the 24-hour averages. So PJM Penelec, $27.20. PJM PP&L, $18 even. The all-important Bitcoin price in dollars per megawatt hour, $89.49. That's a really important number. BTC spot price over 24 hours, $29,009 with a network hash rate of 361. Back to me, please. So once again, similar to the very beginning of July, our Bitcoin price in dollars per megawatt hour looks great. Okay. Now, there's another metric that Stronghold Digital Mining often uses when talking about sort of this metric of, hey, how are we doing as it relates to, Bitcoin mining? And that's something called hash price. So in the thumbnail, the very cheesy looking thumbnail photo to this particular update, I attempted to highlight the two areas of our dashboard, our homemade dashboard, that have undergone some changes. The first change is at the very, very top of the dashboard. There's now in parentheses like two letters, RH, and that basically means recent history. So if you click on that, it'll show you essentially a recent history of like today, whatever day we happen to be in. I would like to make this a little bit more sophisticated, but as a first step, it'll basically show us a 24-hour summation of what's going on, like, during the day that we're in. At the stroke of midnight Eastern time, that gets blanked out and we start again. Better than nothing insofar as like a recent history, but there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. There's also, if you look again, if you refer back to the thumbnail of this image or of this video, down at the bottom, as I alluded to yesterday, under the Bitcoin section of the dashboard, there's now a section just called hash P, and that's essentially the hash price. And I believe it was at around like 7.7 cents, 0.077, something like that the last time I looked. That's very interesting nonetheless, because it allows us to do some interesting computations. For example, if you take a look at the price per terahash that we paid for the MicroBT, WhatsMiner M50s, boy, I'm doing this based on memory, so gosh, I hope I'm not too far off here, but I think we paid something in the vicinity of maybe like $15, $14 to $15 per terahash. So what's kind of intriguing is, right, if we then take a look at our hash price, you can kind of then sort of like figure out, well, how long will it take for these Bitcoin mining machines to be paid off, right? And if you do the math, I mean, it's well less than a year, even at the current hash price, even at like whatever, 0.077 hash, right? Or cents per hash. It like we will have paid for the MicroBT WhatsMiner M50s in, is it 193 days? I did the math like a day or two ago. So again, don't quote me on this. You could do the math yourself, but it's well less than a year. Now, there's no guarantee that we're going to keep the current hash price. I mean, all of this stuff fluctuates, but I'm just saying, Bitcoin mining economics are pretty decent right now, right? They're not phenomenal. They're pretty decent. But even with pretty decent, we're well on pace to pay for these machines like in well less than a year. And that's something that was pointed out by our friends in management, but it's kind of cool to be able to just do the math yourself and be like, yeah, you know what? They're telling the truth. It's, like we will pay these off in less than a year, or they'll have paid for themselves essentially in less than a year. So that's, I think, a really cool thing, and it's another addition to the dashboard. Okay, there's a lot of other stuff kind of going on behind the scenes that I'm attempting to implement and execute upon, and I'll make those announcements when things are ready to kind of be unveiled. But I hope you're doing well. I really do. And to the extent you're, kind of under the gun as it relates to a lot of heat, right, where you live, maybe there's a way to still be able to get outside, maybe later in the day when it's maybe not so hot. Although I'm thinking of a friend of mine, Vince, who's out in Las Vegas, and he tells me that earlier today it was raining, which, gosh, it's like you rarely ever hear of rain in Las Vegas. But that evidently it was still 101 degrees. Vince, if you're watching this, stay cool, my friend. Okay, let's all stay positive. Let's all be great. And as usual, right, we'll see each other again tomorrow.